SITREP World Briefing for July 12, 2026. The United States launched fresh strikes on Iran in the Strait of Hormuz region after an Iranian attack on a commercial ship in the waterway, and Tehran then said it was closing the Strait of Hormuz while beginning a new round of retaliation. Iranian forces fired missiles and drones at Gulf states that host U.S. facilities, turning a confrontation at sea into a wider regional exchange involving Washington, Tehran, and several Arab states on the southern side of the Gulf. The latest action escalated one of the world's sensitive military flashpoints, because the strait is a narrow maritime corridor through which a large share of global oil and gas shipments normally passes. The immediate fallout spread to cities and bases across the Gulf, with the defense ministries of the United Arab Emirates and Qatar saying they were intercepting incoming Iranian missiles, and large explosions reported over Doha, Qatar. Iran's strikes reached Gulf neighbors hours after the new U.S. attacks, highlighting how quickly a shipping incident in the Strait of Hormuz can involve multiple states, air defense systems, and energy routes at once. For Gulf monarchies that host American forces, the danger is not only direct military damage, but also disruption to commercial traffic, tanker movements, and wider regional security calculations if Tehran tries to enforce its declared closure of the waterway. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican from South Carolina, died at age 71 after what his office described as a brief and sudden illness. Graham had become one of the most recognizable Republican voices on foreign policy during his long Senate career, and his death immediately removed a senior figure from the party's national security ranks in Washington. His office announced the death on July 12th, ending a public career that stretched across decades in the House of Representatives and the Senate. Graham's death also carried foreign policy significance because he had recently returned from Kyiv, where he met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Graham had long been identified with positions on defense, alliances, and U.S. global engagement, and he remained influential in debates over Ukraine, Russia, and the direction of Republican national security policy. Politically, Graham's career was defined by a transformation in his relationship with Trump, moving from an early critic to one of the president's supporters in the Senate. His death is likely to reverberate through both South Carolina politics and Senate Republican strategy, because few members combined his seniority, media profile, and personal access to the president over such a long period. The Trump administration subpoenaed New York Times journalists after they reported on alleged security concerns involving the president's new Air Force One plane. The legal summons ordered several reporters to testify before a federal grand jury, turning a news report about presidential aviation security into a leak investigation with potential consequences for source protection, newsroom practice, and executive branch secrecy in Washington. The reporting at issue concerned security problems tied to a new presidential aircraft that had been gifted by Qatar. Air Force One is a central component of presidential command, communications, and continuity planning, so any reporting about vulnerabilities can trigger pressure inside the national security apparatus. By directing journalists toward grand jury testimony, the administration signaled that it is treating the disclosure of those concerns as a serious investigative matter. The subpoenas place the administration on constitutional terrain, where leak inquiries often collide with press freedom protections and the reluctance of U.S. journalists to reveal confidential sources. Federal grand juries give prosecutors broad investigative tools, but efforts to compel reporters' testimony have historically drawn resistance from media organizations, civil liberties advocates, and some former Justice Department officials. The move could test how aggressively the Trump administration intends to pursue national security leaks, and whether courts will force reporters to choose between compliance and contempt. Cuba suffered its second island-wide blackout in 5 days on Friday. The failure hit a Caribbean nation of about 11 million people, as Cuba continued to grapple with a combination of fuel shortages, aging generating infrastructure, and a wider economic emergency that has repeatedly disrupted daily life, industry, and public services across the island. The latest outage came as Cuba's twin energy and economic crises continued to cripple electricity supply, with the immediate pressure worsened by what was described as a 6-month U.S. fuel blockade. A second nationwide collapse in less than a week is significant because Cuba's centralized system has little margin for error. When major plants fail or fuel deliveries falter, blackouts can cascade quickly across provinces, leaving homes, businesses, hospitals, and transport networks dependent on backup power or forced shutdowns. Repeated nationwide outages have become a political and economic test for the Cuban government because electricity shortages affect food refrigeration, water pumping, mobile communications, and factory output at the same time. Friday's blackout showed that the authorities are not dealing with an isolated plant malfunction, but with a broader system failure rooted in deteriorating infrastructure and scarce fuel, conditions that are likely to keep energy security at the center of Cuba's domestic agenda in the near term. Sources and the full written briefing are available at sitrepbrief.com.